Tuesday, Melrose Mountain, Tryon, North Carolina. Higher Ground is the name of our place, and it's not even 60 degrees right now outside. Fall has arrived exactly on the day that fall's supposed to arrive, and there's a little chill to the air, so it's feeling like fall. I heard a story about a lady that was going to have cataract surgery. She was getting up in years, and the doctor was checking her vision before her surgery, and he says, "How many fingers am I holding up?" She said, "It better be 5 if you're going to operate on me." So here we are in Haggai. Maybe you haven't ever heard a message preached from Haggai. Maybe you've forgotten about all of the sin cycles of the Old Testament. It's really quite interesting. In the Old Testament, the people would drift away from God. In their prosperity, they would drift and drift and drift until they would get down lower and lower, and they get caught up in all of the problems that come when you drift away from God, and they'd get to the bottom of the barrel and they would cry out, "Oh God, save us, help us through this difficult time that we're in." And then God would restore them in his grace and his mercy, and they would get back to prosperity, and then they'd begin to drift again. Well, the sin cycle of the Old Testament is pretty much the sin cycle of most of our lives. And most of the time when we're in prosperity and when things are going smoothly, we tend to drift away from God. And then we get ourselves into trouble because we're drifting and because we've gotten away from God. And we cry out to him. I see the same kind of trend not only in individual lives and not only in nations over the course of the history of the Old Testament, but I see it in the church as well. I see this tendency in prosperity and good times for the exact situation that occurred during Haggai's time of prophecy. Now, Haggai comes in to a time when we find Israel has been in bondage for 70 years. Now they're coming out. There's Ezra and Jeremiah very much in the same time frame. And we find that Cyrus has declared that the temple will be rebuilt. As a matter of fact, he's willing to fund it. The people of Israel, 50,000 strong, go back to Jerusalem. They begin to rebuild, and they stop. They stop and they dawdle. Their attention is more on their own reestablishment rather than the reestablishment of the temple. Now remember the significance of the temple. The temple had replaced the tabernacle. The tabernacle and the temple had represented the presence of God. It was a very important thing for the people to have a temple where they might feel the presence of God and where they might go and worship. However, we find that the people caught up in building themselves nice homes, that for almost 18 years, the people of Israel become complacent, satisfied. They've built themselves nice homes, they've reestablished their land, and yet if you really look at God's calling them down along about chapter 1, verse 4, he says, "Consider your ways." In verse 5, and again he repeats that phrase, and again verse 7, "Consider your ways." Because you've dropped this effort of rebuilding the temple, and because you've become so caught up in building for yourselves, I've caused a drought. I've caused the land to be in a situation where you sow much but you harvest little. I've caused it that you have enough to drink but not enough to get drunk. I have caused it so that you have clothing but you're not warm, and I've caused it so that you may be earning money but your purses have holes in them. Can you relate to that? Are you in a time of prosperity where you're really not comfortable, but you've become complacent? You have, but it seems like the outgo is greater than the income. God says, I caused that. He said, he clearly told the people, I caused that. You need to take courage. You need to remember my spirit is present in your midst. And you need to get on about the task of rebuilding the temple. And if you will, if you'll use your time, your talents, and your tithe to rebuild the temple, the glory of the temple will be greater than it ever was. I'll provide, but I want you to draw near to me again. And I want you to see your priorities of what they ought to be. I had a chance to witness this morning as I was talking to a salesman about some speakers for a church locally. And I had a chance to say, in my latter years, I want to glorify God. I want to do all that I can at Temple Baptist Church in Simpsonville, all that I can at Landrum Baptist Church in Landrum, South Carolina. I want to do all that I can to glorify Him. I'm hoping that the glory of my future days, my remaining days, will be greater than my glory of the past days. I don't want to live in the past. And I don't want to become complacent or lukewarm, as the book of Revelation calls the church. I want to be on fire for God. I want to use my time, my talent, and my tithe in order to glorify Him. I want the days of the future to be greater than the days of the past. I hope that you do too, no matter what your age, that you not become complacent, satisfied, but you draw close to God. Remember, He's right here in our midst. He'll supply according to His riches and glory, but not for us to have paneled houses, but for us to glorify Him, that our future days would be greater than our past days. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.